Want to achieve network marketing success? Then you're in the right company. Hello, and welcome to Leave Nothing to Chance, hosted by networking marketing giant, John Solleder. Learn everything you need to know about the network marketing space from somebody who's actually done it. Join us every week for front row seats as we feature some of the finest and most successful personalities in network marketing. Leave nothing to chance. Join us now.
Hello, my name is John Solleder, and I'm going to be your host for Leave Nothing to Chance. This is a unique podcast based on the book Nothing to Chance, written by myself and a gentleman you're going to meet in a minute here, my co-writer and good friend, Foster Owusu, up in beautiful Toronto, Canada. Foster's got an amazing life story, and we're going to be introducing you to people who have amazing life stories. They just happen to be network marketers. They just happen to be able to share lots of information, but they're interesting and compelling people. Also, I want to invite you to follow us. We have a WhatsApp group that we're developing for this, for Leave Nothing to Chance underneath that name. We'll be having some other groups on social media as we develop the podcast. But this is the first one. This is the very first one. And I felt like who better than my co-writer, Foster Owusu, to be the very first person that we would interview about Leave Nothing to Chance, something that's been his baby and my baby now for about 5 years, Foster, since we started working on this, I think, right?
You know, it's been a long delivery, but here we are, John.
Well, here we certainly are. And you know, neither one of us can relate to having a baby physically, but, you know, launching a book and a brand is probably not as close as you get, but we certainly have felt some similar growth pains, perhaps, in growing this product.
Well, I said to somebody some time back, I said, it's a major task when you have two professionals, two individuals that are equally of competitive nature, putting a project together. And it's almost like we wanted to get this so perfectly done. And that was partly part of the reason why it took us so long, because we were not satisfied with just producing a book. We wanted to produce a very high quality book. And I'm glad that we waited and gave it the due time.
Well, we did. And, you know, there's been certainly things that have happened in the world before we launched this book, things that we didn't foresee happening, things that even happened within the network marketing industry, certainly. But, you know, I want to go back, Foster. You know, you have such a amazing life story, you know, the path that you've walked as a human being long before you knew about network marketing is an interesting one. Starting in Ghana as a child, share a little bit about your youth and some of the things that happened and influenced you, both maybe on a negative level and more importantly on a positive level.
Yeah, I mean, John, as you and I have known each other for the years, you know, it's always good for people to get perspectives on life. And I think, you know, part of my journey is one that has a lot of, I would say, dark side, but on the positive side, you know, life has been good. But I must say that, you know, I was born and raised in Ghana, West Africa. And unfortunately for me, my parents died when I was young. My mom in particular died when I was only 7 years old. And then before I turned 15, I had also lost my dad. So that part of my journey was very dark, and it's been very painful for a long, long time. I mean, to this point, when I'm talking about it, I get emotional. But again, I've shared this story so many times. So sometimes, you know, you just hold your tears and make sure that people don't see too much of you breaking down. But the truth of the matter is, it was tough, especially growing up in a country where there's a lot of love, but there's not a lot of social infrastructure that supports situations like some of this death that requires some sort of grieving and counseling that will make a person to realize that life must, you know, go on somewhat. And that type of counseling wasn't available for me. But fortunately, I made it to North America, to a beautiful country called Canada. And this is where the real magic happened, where I saw the opportunity where an average person with extraordinary desire to wanted to do something not only for himself but for for the greater good, can do more and become more. And I think this is where the journey of this conversation is going to take on, because it's been almost 32 years now since I embarked on this journey, and it's been such a beautiful journey, I must say.
So what was it like? What month of the year did you arrive in Canada?
Yeah, so I came to Canada precisely in May of 1986. So, it's going to be almost 35 years very soon. But even in May, I must admit, I experienced this climate shock, not culture shock yet, but climate shock. And I remember in May, I had to go, I first landed in Montreal, and I had to go to a particular farm. And I'm telling you, it was so cold picking things like tomatoes and stuff from the farm. And I thought I was winter. I was just freezing. And I remember being told that, well, if you think this is winter, you wait, give it November,
Wait.
December. And I'm thinking, if there's something worse than this, then I'm in trouble. But thankfully, 35 years later, I'm still alive. So,
Well, you're living and working in Toronto for all the years that I have a lot of friends, like yourself, that are from Ghana. I've got another friend from India, and we always share that laugh. It's like, did they warn you guys about what winter is like in Canada? But it doesn't sound like they gave you the real view of what a Canadian winter was going to be like.
no, that there's nothing like, having that experience firsthand, because I mean, obviously, anybody that has gotten some education understand the basic geographical, locations of almost every country, because simple things like history, geography, math, and English. These are the basic standard course that you must take even to just finish high school. So yes, we had the general knowledge, but to really know that there is a climate that in a typical winter could be almost like being in a freezer. That was not something anybody could have described. Just imagine, I'm from a tropical country, and I know that you love your fruits and you love all the natural stuff. But if you have never tasted banana, and somebody had to describe, banana, to your taste, that is not an easy job. As simple as it is, banana, you said, is sweet. You can't just give it a sweet taste to somebody without them actually practicing it and having that experience. So yes, we knew about winter, but I'm telling you, there was nothing like actually, touching and feeling how cold it can be. Yes.
Sure, sure. So let's talk about now. Let's talk about, you've been in Canada for a long time. You built a wonderful family. Your wife and your children, they're all doing well. You've had this very successful career in network marketing now, spanning many decades. You wrote a book prior to Nothing to Chance. Why don't you mention your other book for a minute?
Yeah, so I mean, the book How to Fire Your Boss and Hire Yourself was actually an inspiration where, it got to a point where you are doing okay. But as you know, our business is not about just you doing okay. You're trying to find ways to inspire others. And I thought the title, How to Fire Your Boss and Hire Yourself, not only is a very catchy title, but it was a goal to use that as a recruiting tool and to use it as a training book. And fortunately, that really gave me a little bit of leverage, where not only that I could say that I've been in the industry for over 2 decades at a time, I could actually prove that I have experienced some level of success. Because the moment you put your story in a book, it's there to stay. And that book, not only that, start gaining attention, as you know, we put it in English and Spanish. And I'm telling you, every place that I have had the opportunity to step foot, it has given me the recognition that I think we all need and deserve. And I'm glad that I took on that project.
So a few years back now, about 5 years ago, you and I having lunch in Toronto, and I said, Foster, we should do a book together. I had done obviously the Moving Up series, the 3 books of Moving Up. At that point, 2 became 3 ultimately. And we decided on this and this concept of leave nothing to chance. But let's talk about leave nothing to chance for a minute. There are 15 very winning principles in that book. What's your favorite?
Wow. For me personally, I mean, this, you know, I would consider it a tough question, John. And I would say tough in the sense that I love all the 15 principles. But if I were to pick one, then it would be principle number 9 for a very simple reason. You and I would not have put this book together for me personally if it wasn't because that principle talks about love. You know, here we are today, it's already going to the end of January. And yes, books are being sold as we are counting, but you and I haven't cashed in any check. But yet we put out our money and our time to put a project that I would say not only that it has our name on it, and hopefully it's going to become our legacy book, but it's also a book that is going to touch, you know, many, many, many lives. Hopefully, that is our goal, to make sure that what we've gone through, what we've learned, lessons that we've learned, will be able to benefit somebody. This would not have happened if it wasn't love. The fact that we're in an industry where a person's real achievement is based on how many people they have actually helped or how many lives they have touched. This industry, everything that, you know, principle number 9 talks about is about love, because I personally don't know of any profession where the person at the very top is reaching down to somebody at the bottom and say, come to where I'm at. It's almost like, you know, most of the time, you know, this industry get labeled in so many ways. If somebody has a beautiful home and that person is trying to encourage somebody to have a beautiful home, if a person is not careful, they will say things like, you're being materialistic. And it's the only industry that I know that the person who already has something wants somebody else to have it. Where I used to work, I never had a boss wanting to teach me everything that he knew so that I would become just as good as he is. And I'm giving a very long answer, but to say that when you and I sat and started thinking about this idea, one of the things that we agreed on was that, man, we've done a lot of great things together. We've been friends all these years. If tomorrow you and I are not here today, our children will not know the kind of relationship we have. And worst of all, we may probably go in our grave leaving some great information unprinted. So this book, you know, has been inspired by a lot of things because we are at a stage in our lives that, let's be honest, you and I, if we decide to be very selfish, which we are not, there's no way we're going to stop. You and I will be able to take care of ourselves. If we don't think about our families, if we don't think about our friends, we can survive. So there's a lot of love in this principle 9 that I believe if a person is going to build this industry, they need to take that to heart to realize, you know, and you and I have a background in faith that we believe that, you know, we've been instructed that the greatest of all command is to love and to love and love and love. And I'm glad that we put that in there.
Absolutely. It's biblical where it starts and finishes, and alpha and omega, and love is a great principle. I share that with you as a couple of others that I'm real passionate about, but today's about you, my friend. So let me ask you this, Foster. You are an extremely well-read individual, and I know that from personal experience because every time I get in your car, you're handing me something else that you're reading right then that you need me to look at either quick or you're giving me a copy of. But young Foster Owusu comes from Ghana, lands in Canada, gets his job, starts to pay the bills, starts to struggle like most people do coming from another country. Somewhere along the line, somebody either handed you a book, you purchased a book, you tripped across a book. Tell me the story. What was the first book that ever influenced Foster Owusu?
Wow. Yeah, that's a big one. There's a book called The Magic of Thinking Big, and this is by Dr. David J. Schwartz. And that book did something so powerful for me personally. Uh, it changed my environment, the way I think. For the past 3 decades since this book got introduced to me, it's like an affirmation book of everything that I had believed, but could not put my finger on something. And the magic of thinking big is one of those books that helps you to look alive and put things in perspective where not that everything has to be big, but it has to be big in the way you think. You can't think small. And and again, it's one of those books that it brought total transformation in my life. And because my very first network marketing company was big on personal development. So it was my very first book that I experienced. And I was glad that it landed on me because the founding president of that company was an individual who also believes in personal development. But not only that, that was the first book, it did not end there. It put me in the driver's seat where it's almost like every single month from that time to now, there's not a single month that has gone by that I have not invested in a book. So that book definitely unlocked the freedom door for me.
So from that book, obviously that was maybe the one that influenced you earliest on. I know you read constantly. If yeah, and I know this is tough. I've asked some other people this off camera that will be asking on camera. I know this is tough. It's tough for me. I'm sure it's tough for you. Give me the three most important books that you've read in this lifetime.
Wow. Yeah. Three. That's a tough one. So one book for sure that I will go for is an excellent book called Man's Search for Meaning, and it was a book written by Viktor Frankl. When I read this book for the first time, Man's Search for Meaning, it was one of those survivor books, those survivor story. Obviously, he's an individual that is written a book from a first-hand experience, sort of. Okay, he's a Holocaust survivor, and when he wrote the book, Man's Search for Meaning, he was actually making the case that the people who survived were the ones who wanted to live. But I also like the fact that he pointed something out saying that, yes, there were people who wanted to live and they still died. So he wasn't trying to belittle the fact that the ones who did not live, it was their fault. But what he was trying to say in the book, at least the gist of the book is, a person must have this desire to want to live for life to have meaning. Because if not, it's easy to surrender. I mean, obviously, you and I, yes, we've had an amazing career in this industry, but it did not come without a price. It did not come without growing. It did not come without stretching. It did not come without, making sacrifices. And all these things is what keeps us in the game. Because and I know that people have joined this industry the same time you joined, the same time that I joined, and they did not stay or they know where to be found. Let's put it that way. They may have moved on to other things, maybe greater things. We don't know. But what I know is it's not everybody that stays in the game. And that's one thing that this book talks about. Because I am so much into, loving some of these live survivor stories. Another book that I love is by, Nelson Mandela, a book called Long Walk to Freedom. And not only that, Nelson Mandela is a great example of a person um, who actually has the determination to fight and stand for what is right. This man endured something that I would say most people would not have. And I'll give you a good example. When he was in prison, besides the fact that he was in prison for 27 years or slightly longer than that, his son died, his first son died. And by the, African or South African culture, he had to, bury his first son. And the only way he could have had that opportunity to bury his son was to somehow, surrender and withdraw everything that he was fighting for. He had to, denounce certain things for them to allow him the opportunity to go and bury his son. And he flat out refused because that would have caused him to lose the fight. Now, if that does not tell you something about that individual, I read a quote by, Martin Luther King Jr., and it says, if a man is not prepared to die for what they believe, then they are not fit to live. And Nelson Mandela definitely is among many things, one of my heroes. Finally, a third book for me is on leadership. And the reason why this book is important, in our business, obviously, we can read all the books, but it takes more than just being excited about life to survive this journey. So there's a book that I read, it's called The Seventh, and it's written by a fellow by the name of James C. Hunter. And James C. Hunter talk about, leadership, but more so from a servant leadership point of view. You and I, have admiration for somebody like, say, John C. Maxwell, because he's written probably more books on leadership using biblical principles. What I like about James C. Hunter's book is the fact that he told stories that almost the average person can relate to. So just to paint a picture in closing on this, we know somebody like Warren Buffett. Just imagine this business icon that we all, admire. Just imagine, assuming he disappeared, and we don't hear about Warren Buffett. And then you and I decide to maybe one day go on a retreat. And you check into, let's say, a little lodge, not a hotel, nothing fancy, only to find out that, your toilet is leaking, something is wrong, so you call for a plumber. And guess who showed up? Somebody that looks like Warren Buffett. And you can tell that this is Warren Buffett, but you couldn't really call him Warren Buffett because now he's using a different name. And in no time, you get to realize that it's actually Warren Buffett coming to fix your toilet. Just right there. And he told the story in such a way that if a person like Warren Buffett can serve you and I, and of course, you and I have examples in the Bible where we know what Jesus did, before, he went on the cross, he washed his disciples' feet. So you and I is nothing new. But what I'm saying is, to the average person who is in the business world, reading a book like that, I mean, we're in a business where you know that our ego can actually get out of hand, because once you have accomplished something, you feel that you should get all the attention. And that can also get in the way of even bigger success. So reading books like that on leadership for me is humbling, and I'm just all in for such knowledge.
Yeah, and I think, just to add to that too, I think when you write, like, you and I have, a few books in our lives, but you realize what some of these people were going through, to your point, to be able to capture it and then have to relive it in some cases. You know what I mean? Sometimes they're very horrible experiences, for example. But let's talk about now. I know you share in the philosophy that I do, that all leaders do, that all leaders are readers and all readers are leaders, right? It works both ways. What are you reading?
Well, I mean, right now I'm reading a book that it happens to be right in front of me. It's a book by Dr. Alan Zimmerman. It's called The Payoff Principle. And I'm reading this book because, we're at a point in our lives where, yes, from day one, we had our why before us. And every time that I talk about why, I want to be very careful because for some people, being driven by why, they think you should have your how before the why. For me, it's the opposite because I'll tell you why. If I did not have a why reason, it would be very difficult for me to get up every single day and do what I do. If I did not have the family responsibility, if I did not have the desire to make sure that I am there to support my family and to give them the very best that life has to offer, I could be just the average lazy boy because some people have chosen that. They are minimalists and it's okay and it's working for them. But even today, when I'm doing something, even if it's to reward somebody first, I still want to know the payoff. I still want to know, am I doing this knowing that it's going to better somebody's life? Because if it is going to better somebody, then there's a payoff. It doesn't have to be my payoff. But you cannot, I don't know how a person can get anything done without a big why behind it. On the same note, when I wrote my first book, chapter one, I talked about, having this emotional why, and I used the gazelle and the lion. And the reason why I'm fascinated about this why is because I have been on a safari, and because again the background I have watched the way the lion and the gazelle really operate when they are on the safari. When the gazelle wakes in the morning, it knows it must run, but it doesn't end there. The lioness also knows it must run, but it must outrun the gazelle. Otherwise, it's going to go to bed hungry.
Mm.
But at the same time, the gazelle also knows that it must outrun the lioness, otherwise, it's going to be dead. So when you know that you're going to become somebody's breakfast or lunch or dinner, do you just sit back and just relax? It's easy to cross your fingers and say things will work out without any action. And even though you and I believe that things will work out because almost every challenge that we face, either collectively or individually, one of the things that among many things that I really like about you and our friendship is you always come out with this, we'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. It doesn't mean that it comes so easy, but it's almost like, okay, let's find out what the problem is. Let's come out with a solution. Well, things like this type of creative way of solving problem would not have happened without some level of knowledge and also a reason why we need to do those things to solve the problem, because they can easily get in the way of our successes, distractions here and there. So the payoff principle is a new book that I'm reading, and it's exciting.
Great. Great. Sounds great. I got to check that one out. All the other ones you mentioned, I'm very familiar with, but that's a new one for me and for our listeners. And that's, once again, Foster, I know you share the same sentiment is, look, I mean, we've written books that we want people obviously to read, because if you're in network marketing, you should read them. We're from the trenches. We do this for a living. We support our families, through network marketing. So when we write a book, you can bet we've done the stuff in the book. You can't always count on that. So with some folks, but all these other books too are going to bless you and build an abundance of books. When you're gone to the next life and your kids go through your stuff, make sure there's some really good books, some books that they're going to value, that they're going to read, that they're going to share with your grandkids. Your TV set will be replaced. It'll be outdated probably by the time you get it anyway, but books never get old. Concepts never get old. So let's talk about another concept, Foster, unrelated to books, but of course, everything relates back to reading and knowledge. We're in an industry where a lot of new people are joining the industry right now because of a lot of factors. Obviously, the biggest one being the pandemic certainly has forced people that perhaps were never thinking of getting involved in network marketing to say, hey, let me make sure I got a plan B. Your advice to a new person getting started to get off to a fast start. What are the things they can do the first 2 days, the first 2 weeks, the first 2 months to really ramp up and get their business started, even if they're part-time, even if they go back to do whatever they did previously when the pandemic goes away? Hopefully it will. But when it does, if it does, or if it doesn't for that matter, what should they do to build a business quickly and efficiently to get themselves started in this extra time that people now have being home so much?
Well, John, I mean, obviously, if a person has already made a decision, but they are fairly new, my recommendation would be, work closely with the person who introduced you to the company. But please, 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 please find out somebody in that line of leadership. Find out somebody who is successful, somebody who has attained a level of success, somebody who has something that you want, because this is the person you want to start speaking with and talking to on a regular basis. It is something that most people don't do, but I'm telling you, it will save you a lot of problem and time, because more often than not, you have somebody come into our type of industry and they are looking at the person that introduced them, and that person may not necessarily have the drive. So you may come from behind, but you want something bigger and better. And if you don't have somebody that can inspire you, that can hinder your success. So you want to quickly get hold of somebody. That's the very first thing. The second thing is you want to start learning everything, but learn in a way that you're going to start thinking about how I'm going to teach it to somebody. Because you see, if you are learning something with no future plans of teaching it to somebody, you can be very casual about it. And our business, the real success, is not about how well you're doing, but how well you and your team are doing. So everything that you're going to be learning, make sure that you will be able to teach. And to do that, you have to learn it well. I said this to somebody the other day. I was talking and you and I know that every time we sit in front of somebody that will consider a mentor, the moment they start speaking, we grab pen and paper, we start taking notes. And the reason why we do that is because we don't want to miss anything. So here exactly last week, I was talking to somebody and I'm into something very deep. And all I could see was the person was sitting there listening. And all I had to say to this person was, if you know that this information that you are taking from me is something that you're going to have to teach somebody, would you change the way you are listening to me? And right away, the person grabbed pen and paper. So you see the difference. He was relying on his memory, but the moment he realized that at some point he may have to go and teach somebody, it changed the attitude. So you and I would not be sitting here today doing what we're doing today if we had not taken notes. We're not the smartest people, but frankly, there's enough evidence that we were good students, and that's why we're here. We where we are today. That being good students for sure, we can bet on that.
Well, absolutely. And you had the privilege that a lot of people, because he's been gone for a few years now, and he was up there in years. So a lot of people never had a chance to meet him. But I know you spent time with one of the greats, one of the pillars of this industry, Mr. Rich DeVos, way back. What was that experience like?
Wow, wow, wow. John, I didn't know you were going to go there. Yeah, I mean, this man has been gone a few years now, but I can tell you his spirit lives in my home because I actually have stuff in my home with his name on it that was personally presented to me. And it says, an evening, it says, you are the difference, an evening with Rich. And of course, his name is Rich DeVos. But I'll tell you this, when I first joined his company, there was a contest going on, similar to our incentive trips and stuff like that. And I was new in the industry. I've never joined any network marketing company, but I was hungry for something. And the recommendation from my leader at the time was, well, if you really, really want to meet this man the way you've been talking about, then you need to qualify because that's the only place you get to meet him. And I said, really? What do I need to do? And of course, he showed me at the time you need to, qualify for a particular rank. And all I can say is not only that I achieved that, but I achieved it in a timely manner. But at this particular banquet, he came and tapped me on my shoulder. And I'm meeting this man for the first time. So just imagine being tapped on the shoulder. He goes, son, you have the right posture. You keep doing what you're doing. I guarantee you become successful someday. Now, that feeling has never left me. It's been a good 31, going 32 years. And I can tell you, if you imagine, even way back then, there was a list of um, the world 101 richest people on the Fortune magazine, and he was somewhere around number 65. And these were all billionaires. So apart from his wisdom, his life accomplishments alone, to say that not only that I've read a lot of his books, but to have met this man who tapped me on the shoulder, that was just the best blessing. So yeah, good memory, John.
Yeah, yeah. No, I've seen some of the pictures that you have with them, and it was special because those those early pioneers of our industry. You and I were lucky to know one or more of, and some of the newer folks that we'll be interviewing on here. They never had that opportunity to meet those people, so it's a blessing. And of course, you stand on shoulders of giants when you are in the industry as long as you've been, and you started where you started, and you met Rich DeVos, and Rich DeVos believed in you before anybody probably believed in you besides you. Got to believe in yourself first, right? Or you wouldn't have shown up, but what a blessing that must have been. So as we wrap up here, Foster, just last couple of words of advice to the folks that are going to be listening to this across the world over the next few years.
Well, John, I mean, the industry has changed quite a bit, and particularly during this era, if it's safe to say this era of pandemic, there was a time when you tell people that you can actually build a successful home-based business. It was a joke for some people. They didn't know that you could actually work from home. And I can tell you, since the beginning of this pandemic, there are a lot of corporate executives who have made it possible for their staffs to work from home. And people are beginning to realize that you can work from home. A day like today, I can tell you, it has snowed quite a bit here in Toronto, but I've not stepped outside my home. So I don't need to start any car to go to work. I'm seeing all the vehicles are still parked outside. But the opportunity is so real today. You in particular, your story, among many things that I admire about you, from the time you left college in 1983 till now, you've been very consistent. So that focus has proven itself that when a person, finds something that works, it can really build a lifetime and some of this, generational wealth. So here we are talking about your success, my success, but more so about the ones to come, future leaders. And even if you have something going for you right now, start thinking about plan B and plan C. And what that means is don't just hold on to that full-time job. And I think when I wrote my book, How to Fire a Boss and Hire Yourself, it was more a security statement than trying to probably alienate any employer. I'm not trying that, but my philosophy is, if somebody gives you fish today, it will only last you a day and that's all you have. But if you can learn how to fish for yourself, then eventually you can feed yourself and your family. And that's where our type of business comes in, because even if a person has a job, I believe there's no better part-time opportunity than this. Because think about it, even if you have a part-time job, and I've worked part-time job in my early years working for UPS and going to school and working, but after working with, say, UPS for, say, a year, if you were putting in 20 hours a night, okay, after the year, you get a last check and it's finished. The same way you put the same 20 hours a week in our business part-time, a year from now, a good company like ours, you will still have something to hold on for the rest of your life. 22 years for me, almost, and in your case, 24, going 25 years. It goes to show that when you find a good company, I'm telling you, a good company, and every company has something to brag about. But I tell people, you have to know something that is in alignment with your own core values. And fortunately, you and I have found a good company, and hopefully, our children and their children will be able to. So yeah, it's a good thing to consider.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, Foster, I want to thank you first of all for your time, your friendship, your co-writing, everything else that we've gone through with Leave Nothing to Chance. It's been a journey. It's been a worthwhile journey. It's funny because I think we both agreed when we saw the final copy it was like, this is really good. And not because we wrote it, it was really good. And it's exciting. It's exciting to put your name on something that you invested, not only money, and the money's the easy part, it's the time and the brain, which is unique. But more than that, I think it's something here that's going to help this generation of network marketers, the next generation of network marketers, and generations beyond it. We've got some young people in the book. Okay, like Carissa Rogers, for example, down in Florida, and Giancarlo Torres in Atlanta, and a couple of others that are in their early 20s. I mean, and they're just killing it with their companies, and they're just doing a great job. I mean, they're the next generation, and they're in the book. And conversely, we've got some of us old guys in the book. So we got some of everything in there. But I want to thank everybody for listening. This is our first podcast. They're only going to keep getting better and better, but the content that you heard today can't be improved upon. Foster Owusu is a unique individual, a unique man, a man who has worked hard at building not only his business, but building himself. And that's really the message of these podcasts, is that you can do what Foster has done. So thank you for your time, and look forward. There's more to come.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Leave Nothing to Chance. If you want to know more about what it takes to succeed in the network marketing space, join us again next week for another amazing episode. For additional resources and to connect with John Solleder, visit leavingnothingtochance.com. Don't forget to leave a review, and we'll see you next time.